In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
I got my hands full doing my job. Well, isn't this your job? Now, I happen to have a bit of a fire underneath me right now to have the conversation. That's not going to happen for everybody. That's fine. I'll carry this torch right now. And then when I get tired of it, I'll pass it on to somebody else. And hopefully it won't fall to the wayside. But we need to encourage admins to take a look at what you have in place. We talked about the ride-alongs. You could secretly request, or maybe the chaplain could have the authority to say, I'm riding with you tonight. Oh, okay. Nobody knows what's going on. You just show up and say, hey, and next week I got you. Oh, okay. So we have to empower the chaplains to be able to make some decisions. Now, just in terms of, I want to circle back to the first thing that the conversation that I had, the first thing that he said was he did not fit the profile. Is there even a profile to fit? No.
Well, I think we try to make everything logical, and that's something that's not even for that individual at the time.
You're right.
Unless you've been in that darkness, that hopelessness, and I'll be honest with you, I felt that at one time in my life that it's over. That darkness and that hopelessness is, wow, what a wet blanket on top of you, and all of the weight that you feel, and you don't sleep, you don't eat right. It's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the connections that end up making the difference.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, it was my connection that I finally, and it wasn't me that made it. It was all God, because I didn't even know how to pronounce your name. I knew that you were one of our chaplains, and that's really all I knew. I'd made up my mind I was going to confide with the other chaplain.
Yeah.
And nothing against him, but God set it up so that you showed up at just the right time. I mean, it turns out that you almost have to be at the bottom before you can finally look up and find him. So again, that darkness, I don't think even the individual realizes where they are. You might have what they call suicide ideations, and they are the experts, whoever they are even saying that for first responders, it's probably 60% of the first responder population has had ideations and may be having them right now. But that doesn't mean that they're going to take their own life.
Yeah.
And there's, and like I say, the jury's still out in terms of what it really means. There's a lot of research out there. Most of it, I think, is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of dollars at stake, because as over the last decade or so, as this has really become to the forefront, that as soon as they've seen that, you know what, we're having more suicides than we are line of duty deaths, that really started the process, if you will, of change. But I've heard psychiatrists, I went to a meeting probably over a decade ago where they were talking about suicide in the fire service. And this psychiatrist was very proud of the fact that they did ride-alongs with a very busy ambulance in a big city, and now they have captured everything that's wrong with firefighters. And I see you shaking your head. You remember that one too.
Yep.
She thought she had it figured out, and I'm thinking, boy, did those boys that she rode with ever put her on a ride.
Yeah.
you ain't going to get it out of us. Because sometimes we don't even know. But firefighters, I think it's the proudness, the pride sometimes. I'm sure egos get in the way quite a bit as well.
Yeah.
But,
So
we
what's
want
that one word
everybody.
that covers that?
Pardon?
What's the one word that covers all of that?
Go for it.
Deception.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
And you get in your own way because when you're in that darkness, the only way you see logically is to end it. And you can't rationalize yourself out of that. You have to have help, and to be able to open yourself up for help when you are quite literally at the bottom takes an act of God, because you think you've made peace in your head that the only way out now is to be done, to end it, whatever that method is. The ideology has nothing to do with it. That part doesn't matter. That part where you get to the only way out is to be done. And you can't logically get yourself out of that, because the logic is that's the answer.
Yeah, you get tunnel vision on that. And the helplessness is incredible. You just can't logic yourself out of it. It takes a connection. Some of the research that I just read just recently, they looked at suicide after 9/11. There was a 6-month dramatic drop in suicide after 9/11.
Still hot.
Still hot. I got to get me one of those tumblers.
Because people were united. And we've talked about that in one of our other podcasts.
Yeah.
It was the fact of being united that made the difference. Another event that occurred that made the suicide dramatically drop for about the same time period was COVID. With the lockdowns and everything, people had to rely more on one another. At first, no, because everybody, the fear there was the big culprit. But then people started sneaking around and really realizing that lack of connection was horrible on us. But it did bring families back together because you were locked in the same building with one another for the most part.
Well, and I said that there may not be necessarily a profile per se, but I know that we have to categorize things. I understand that. You fill out a report, you have to check a box. I mean, there's a lot of responsibility for admin.
Right.
But there are risk factors that we can pay attention to. And one of the things, I think the misconceptions that people have is that I always knew he was weak. That's why he did this. Well, wait, let me say this to you. It's not cowardly and it's not weak, because for you to successfully complete your own death by suicide, you have to override such a strong self-preserving mechanism. Everything within you is built in for self-preservation.
For survival.
Yeah. So you've got to be just the opposite. In fact, it's interesting. It's interesting that just a week prior to this call with my friend, I had another frantic situation. I can't give you too many details, but the person spoke to me up front and personal, and I thought, I could tell by the look in their eyes, something's not right. And I've had situations where I've walked into places before, and one particular one, the guy was sitting there with his loaded handgun. He said, I'm glad you didn't bring backup because you'd all be dead right now, and then I would have killed myself. I went, oh, Lord, I'm glad I just opted to go in there alone, which I don't advise unless you know that you're supposed to do that. But the point was, that situation turned out to be very good, but it could have been very bad. This other situation that I'm referencing, the person, that's the one thing this person said to me. They're tired of people throwing this concept and idea to them that, you shouldn't be thinking about suicide. You shouldn't be talking that way. That's a cowardly thing to do. And the person said to me, that just enrages me even more that you call me a coward. And it's so important that we don't assume we know, or you want to just put the stereotype on, I knew this person was going to do it because they have always struck me as a weak person. That's a mistake that people make. Originally, I mean, what springboarded us into this conversation is this 36-year veteran who took his own life was anything but a weak person, was anything but a cowardly person. In fact, was the one who always encouraged and uplift others. And so one thing we have to do is to get the preconceived ideas out of our head.
Right.
From the
That's
top
important.
on down. No one is exempt.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly your peer support leader's not exempt. Your chief of department, your sheriff, your whoever it is,
Your chaplain?
Yeah, your chaplain, your congressman, your president. I mean, nobody's exempt from this. And so there is no stereotype, if you will. And so what did that do for me? How did that change my perspective since that phone call? I can look at you two differently right now and realize you two aren't exempt. And if I've got something to say to you, doggone it, it's important. If I want to engage with you, this is important. If I'm going to do a ride along with you, this is important because I care about you. I can go, I happened to do that to a chief of department just the other day and said, how are you doing? And I don't want none of this, I don't want none of this fluff. I want to know how you're doing. So it had a profound effect on me immediately that I'm not going to be bashful. I'm not going to be timid. If I send you a random text message, there might be a reason for that. And we're not going to diminish the effectiveness or diminish the importance, because I'm not just there to exchange pleasantries with you so that you'll like me and accept me as one of your own. That is a huge mistake that people make, is that, I got to learn how to exchange pleasantries and talk their language so they'll accept me. You know what? I don't want a chaplain like that. I don't want to serve with a chaplain like that.
No. We need that standard to look up to. We don't need somebody that's going to jump down the trench with us necessarily and speak the language, if you will. We need that standard so that we can bring ourselves back up.
Yeah. Well, if I am a resource as a chaplain, if my friend is a resource for his department and community, if he's a resource, and he is, and I know he feels the same way that I do, that we take this very seriously. This is important to us. I don't have any time to waste like you don't. I'm getting older, and I'm not saying that in a facetious manner. I'm not trying to be lighthearted. And, this is not a time really for any levity here. But, once I reached the 6th floor, so I'll be 61 in January. That's coming soon. I realized that, holy smokes, these decades flew by. I'm not going to waste any more time playing games. If you want my help, if you bring me in as your chaplain support, and I am so privileged to serve our departments, our county, and I know that I'm there for the right reason, and that I am seen as a valued resource, that makes all the difference in the world, then I'm not going to play little games. I'm going to show up with the specific. I want to be there to help you. If my presence is going to encourage you and help you, I'm going to be there. If I need to take it a step further and pull you off to the side and say, dude, something's wrong. What's going on? Really, nobody recognized in this nobody recognized anything until my friend had said the last 30 days he rapidly deteriorated, according to his spouse. Now, get this. So, 36 years on the job, recently retired, completely disengaged, disconnected from his whole life's purpose. He now is in retirement, and everybody go, oh, enjoy it, you deserve it, let's have a cake, let's have a party. And guess what? He's not a part of anything anymore. He's not carrying a radio. He's not talking. He's not being dispatched. He's not doing anything except at home with the one person he doesn't know anymore, his wife, because he had neglected that relationship. See, he sacrificed his marriage on the altar of his service. Mm-hmm. And so now he's feeling guilty. He didn't do a better job of staying connected to her. He's disconnected from her. He's disconnected from the only thing that gave him value and purpose, his job. He had no life. I mean, this is the way it was communicated to me. He had no life outside of his career. Well, guys, that is a huge risk factor. You're recently retired. You are pulled away from the only thing that gave you value and your identity. Now you're in a house with the person you don't even really know anymore. Risk factors, red flags. Now, he didn't fit the profile, but he made all the mistakes.
How about that?
Yeah. And you know, I'm talking to myself right now because I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how many more years my wife's going to tolerate what I do. And I said to her, you know, I realize at this stage of the game, you know, we were hoping that I could slow down a little bit and we could do things a little bit differently. And I'm going to let our audience know that my assistant left and moved on to greener pastures. And, you know, obviously it left a void. And so, you know, you've got double, triple duty on top of double, triple duty. You know, and I'm scrambling to find more help and looking for people. You know, I mean, I'm trying to build a team for succession. Because I'm not going to do this forever. And there's going to come a point in time. There's going to come a point in time when my wife is going to say, "You're done. I need you. I want you." I don't ever want her to say, "I don't need you. I don't want you." And she's still struggling. I'm not going to lie to you. She still struggles with finding the balance. And I jokingly said to her, "Hey, I'm still having fun doing this. If it ever stops being fun, I'll be done with it." Well, I'm having a good time because I love to minister to people. I love to be a resource. I love to be a source of encouragement. But we all have to find that balance, don't we? And that's the one thing. Now, we're going to have an empty nest like in the next week. And I'm starting to panic a little bit because I'm like, man, it's awful quiet in the house. We had a house full of noise. I mean, it was always wild and chaotic. And now, you know, I've got 2 more grandkids coming. Before, I mean, we could have our grandchild number 6 could be here at any time now. Grandchild number 7 is going to come sometime in December, January. You know, so things are going to get even more busy. But in all of that, we have to make sure that we don't lose connection with that special person. Because there will come a day when you are finally retired, and now that's what you have to look forward to is time with that person that you don't know now. So risk factors, absolutely. And if you're taking notes as an admin, as a person who's responsible to oversee the overall health of your department, there is no profile, but there are risk factors, and retirees are at high risk. They have to be given something to do. They should, if they so choose. Now, it just so happens, Chief, that I pulled you into things whether you liked it or not, and I wasn't going to let you go.
No, that transition for me was really easy. And as I approached, I actually had 3 years before I retired, I actually physically had told them that I was retiring, and then as things would have it, I had 3 more years. However, I already had that connection with you, but that connection became stronger in those last 3 years. And that, I think that was the difference maker, because I retired on a Friday, August 15th of 2008. And on that Monday, when I drove by the fire station, it was as though I had never been in there. It was almost like a foreign building. It was amazing. But other chiefs had called me over the last 3 years then, before retirement, actually retiring, and saying, 1, do not retire in the summer, August 15th. Okay. Check that box. And then 2, stay connected to the fire service in terms of doing assessments. The Illinois fire chiefs offered me all kinds of things that I could do to help them along, that I could go out and visit other departments, that I could be involved in the fire service. There was all kinds of opportunities that were paying even in that regard, as well as training, because I was a certified instructor and I had quite a few things that I was certified to teach in, and they all just kept saying, don't retire in the summer and get involved in one of those two areas for sure. Then they said, for those who have retired before you, that we can tell you that if you don't, you'll be dead.
Yeah.
And I didn't do either one of those. It was very easy it was really a commitment to God, saying, okay, I'm willing to give up computers. Computers have been very big in my fire service career. I was willing to give up responding to calls, which I love to do. You give up the camaraderie of all of my fellow firefighters that I had developed over the years. And it's like, okay, yeah, check that one off. Lord, I'll give that all away. I just want to serve my pastor. That was what I wanted to do. And the reality of it is, as you brought me in and said, this is what I need, computers became, and technology in general, you steeped me deeper than I had ever been. And I thought there was no way that I could ever get any deeper than what I had been. I was very, very fortunate in some of the projects that I was able to do and accomplish. And it was like, wow, this is awesome, because it involved people.
Yeah.
And then, like I say, coming over, and then eventually, probably a year later, you started bringing me into the fire service a little bit with the chaplaincy. We went to different trainings on particularly suicide prevention in law enforcement and firefighters and EMS. And that started, like I say, probably a year or two after I retired, but there's been so much of that. So it's gotten into a deeper, and just to back up on that, it was that 1 year of just being totally out of it was very comfortable. I didn't have those flashbacks or anything. There was a new goal in mind. It was a season of change, certainly, and brought me back into it. But it also gave me a bird's eye view of the first responders and this idea of suicide prevention, we've turned so many things from behavioral health, mental health, you name it. We've given it so many different names. No wonder we've confused everybody with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we've done, I mean, obviously, whatever size platform God gives us, I mean, I hope that our platform will grow. So we're just using the expression or the term employee health, because it is confusing and people jump on the bandwagon, and I'm sure, there was no shortage of opportunities for you. People start offering you jobs, just like this law enforcement officer who took his own life in the last 30 days. He had probably more than a dozen job offers. He declined every one of them. That was a sign that something's wrong. But the chaplain, and again, I said all chaplains are not created equal. The chaplain is an important piece to department resiliency or employee health. You have to take the time as an admin. You have to take the time to get to know your chaplain. Mm-hmm. You have to. I can't overemphasize this. You and I had a great relationship. And that just transferred right over into me becoming your pastor, your family's pastor. And now we've corrupted your son, who considers me his pastor as well. If there is a model, if we were to promote, and if someone were to call us in and say, hey, talk to us about the chaplaincy, I would say, listen, the highest and best idea is, if you don't have a pastor or a home church, is that you get in underneath your chaplain, let him be your pastor or her, because you're going to need to develop relationships and purpose outside of the job. Inevitably, you will retire. That's going to happen. And if you have nothing else, and I hate to use the expression fall back on, because we don't like to use the word retire. We say refired. You got refired on this other mission here. And I saw to it that I did not let you go, even though you tried pulling away from me a few times.
Yes, I did.
You know, and I'm a patient man. I have to be, for putting up with this.
Yes, you are.
Yep. So, once I realize that there is a connection that God has given me with admin, with leaders, I will hang on to that loosely at first to make sure that I don't smother someone. But understand this, administrators, understand this, leaders. There is a connection and a relationship that God has ordained for you to help you be a better leader, to help you be a better admin, to help you personally, professionally, and then after the career, because we're all going to get there one day, and I don't even, of course, my situation, as my wife jokingly says, you're going to preach until you die. I'm like, well, I enjoy preaching. I love to teach the Word of God, and some of these pastoral duties that keep me running ragged, I wouldn't mind slowing down on some of that, so you could maybe sort of kind of be retired in a sense, but there is no retirement plan for me, and we jokingly say, well, the benefits are out of this world, so keep working, buddy. Whatever. We're changing the culture. How? Well, we're going to start talking about this subject openly and honestly. We're not going to hold back. It is your job as a leader, as an admin, to get this figured out. That's your job. Deputy chief, that's your job.
It's learn who's behind the badge.
Yeah. And we have to develop these relationships. The chaplain needs to be, obviously, first and foremost, if people don't trust the chaplain or don't like the chaplain, it ain't going to work, but the chaplain can do so much good in developing relationships and getting a finger on the pulse of things, because we've determined, and I'll make an important point here after, we've determined that the majority of the first responders we dealt with do have a personal faith.